Welcome to Tabletop Gaming Guild Show. The Tabletop Gaming Guild Show is all about the memories and experiences of playing tabletop games with friends and family can create. And on this episode, we're going to be talking about nature-themed games. But before we start doing that, we're going to talk about what we've been playing. And we'll go ahead and start off with Nathan, because he looks super enthusiastic for some reason. There we go.
Always enthusiastic.
Yeah, there you
I'm
go.
excited to be here as always.
There you go. It's good to be here, is it not? All right. So
they make me come on here.
I did. He's actually literally the only thing he can move is his hands because he's chained to that seat.
Yeah, it's.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how they convinced me, but I'm still here.
All right, Nathan. So what have you been playing?
I've been playing a couple games. I've been playing Boon Lake, which I have right over here. I cannot hear anybody now. So Boon Lake is a kind of a Euro game, basically, with exploration, and you are going to be... What was that?
Nothing.
So Boon Lake, right here.
Yep.
Looked really nice.
I love
cover.
the art.
Yeah, the art is beautiful. In it, you are going to be taking actions from tiles and there's like 7 different actions you can take on your turn, and everybody else can follow with those actions. Their follow actions are slightly different than your primary actions, but for the most part, you have options to explore, you have options to play cards and get different effects. And it is very much a point salad. It's a relatively heavy game, but not, brain burny. And it's very satisfying, and it feels like a game that you feel good about all your decisions. There aren't necessarily bad decisions because you're getting points from everything you do. And it's often a very high scoring game that still remains relatively close. And it looks beautiful.
Yeah, that one looks pretty sweet. I've been on my radar for a while, but never ran into anyone with a copy of it. And, I think I'll play it eventually, especially when we meet up.
And that's
Alexander Pfister.
I was going to say, that's one of Dan's favorite designers there.
Right. Not as good as Eric M. Lang, of course.
Who's that?
The best designer in the world. You know who he is. He makes great games. Like, all of them are great. Cthulhu Death May Die. Blood Rage.
You talk about made-up titles.
I've been playing I played a couple other mediocre games. Called an Adventure. James is familiar with that.
Yep.
It's a very linear game. Basically, you're going to be acquiring cards that give you symbols and using them to do challenges that give you more symbols, but you have to do like error per error. You have 3 cards per error that you can acquire, and then once you've finished all 3 errors, the game is over.
Mm-hmm.
You trigger the end of the game. It's an interesting game, but it's very, as I said, very, very linear. Feels very scripted, essentially, for the lack of a better word. So it ended up a little bit with a bland impression.
Well, it's like the hero's journey on there. I mean, I won't not play it if someone asks, but I'm not going to actively ask the people play it. I have the Stormlight Archive version of it, Call to Adventure, which, if you watch the show, I'm a huge Brandon Sanderson fan, so I am super loving the art that comes. If you like Brandon Sanderson and you like Stormlight Archive, Call to Adventure has amazing art through it. Mediocre game, amazing art.
So the next game I played was Keyforge, which I played the original. I have an early copy of it that I just finally got and tried out. And this is a procedurally generated 2-player head-to-head card game, in which you are trying to gain amber and converting those ambers into keys. And once you got 3 keys, you've won the game. So it's essentially ends up being a race game, each deck is going to be different. Some of them will steal more. Some of them will be focused on getting creatures out that you can use to either attack or generate amber to get towards the end of the game. Can be a very fast game. I thought it was fun, but it does depend on your decks that you have. Because it's procedurally generated, the decks can vary quite significantly in the strength and quality. If you have a good deck, it is a lot of fun, but not so fun if you're playing a really good deck against somebody who happens to have, a garbage deck.
And they do have that if you use the app. So they have the app that they just reinitialized for it. They have a chaining system. So that chaining system will balance your decks out. The only problem I had was it was fine. It was great. But I sort of like lost that whole CCG feeling. They took the heart of the CCG, ripped it out, crushed it, spat on it, and threw it on the floor. So you get what you get with those decks, and ultimately, because I can't make like a themed deck or anything like that, so I had like particular factions that I liked and stuff, the thing really fell flat for me. Because after a while, it got like, I get what I get sort of thing.
Yeah, I don't know if it has rules for building your own deck, but it's not really designed for it.
Each deck back is different. So
I
mean, you could technically say, screw you rules, and sleeve them, and then make your own deck. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I don't, they definitely did not, that procedural generate thing definitely did not balance the decks out.
No.
So, and they lost the algorithm anyway, and they had to make a new. And I was like, what the heck?
Yeah, I think they did work on the algorithm as they went to balance a little bit more, but I don't think it ever really got to that point.
No, I mean, it's not a bad game. It's just not it's sort of I hate to use the word gimmicky, but it is. It's a bad word, but.
Yeah, I mean, the gimmick was interesting, but I don't think the gimmick really worked.
Yeah.
To its benefit.
And there was a lot of hype for it. Like it's, hey, you don't have to worry about getting $1 billion cards. Well, you don't have to worry about getting any cards because you're just going to get what you get. Sort of. But, yeah. All right, continue on, dear sir.
The last mediocre game that I've been playing is The Last Kingdom.
You're dead. Not a mediocre. You're dead. Done. You just don't know the nuances to the game there.
Well,
it is okay. So to be fair, I'll let you lead into this. It is not a game that plays well unless everyone is into the cutthroatiness of the game, and no one gets butthurt. But go ahead.
Well, I like the cutthroat nature of it, and I like the game overall, but I feel it has a potential for downtime's the wrong word, but there's a lot of knowing what you want to do and having to wait for the right time. So you can spend a lot of time waiting and watching.
But it's all that planning and backstabbing. That's the whole thing. And yes, you are right. When you start a round, you can wait a lot. You have to wait out your trap.
Yeah, I mean, it could be up to half an hour where you're not participating in the game. You're just waiting and watching.
Well, I don't know about not participating.
Well, you're just waiting and watching, but you're not actually taking any actions. Sometimes. I've had that happen a couple times.
It's all in the way that the people play it.
Yes.
And it's a very fluid game. The problem is if like a game, a Take That game, which is not full Take That, but you can have hurt feelings with that game. I know. And it's really dependent on the other players. Like the game is the other players.
Yeah, and 3 players. I think some of the issues are exasperated a little bit more. In
the game is not good 3-player. It is not.
Right.
You need to play 4 or above. Period.
For example, I played a game with the Alfred in a 3-player game, and both the other players were Viking factions, and did not switch that often, and Alfred cannot switch, so it always felt like it was 2 versus 1 the entire game,
Well,
which was not
yeah.
enjoyable.
Alfred, or he is a advanced player card too. Like
Yes.
he's very hard to play. So he would be one that you play the game 4 or 5 times, and then you play him, and then he is OP for people that have played the game a lot, because not being able to switch factions is amazing, because you basically rig them up so you're switching factions constantly. You're just getting points. So there's different combos that you can create in there where he's like, I'm going to switch factions. No, you can't. Here's some points. I'm going to switch factions. No, you can't. I'm going to get points. You just rig those throughout the game, and it's not easy to do. You have to know the cards, all of them. You have to know what people have, what they drafted. You have to use your action points, which he does get a lot of action points, very, very efficiently.
Yes.
He is a hard character. I don't think he should be a starting character. I think that was a mistake, especially in a 3-player game. That is not good.
Right. It did suggest him as your first playthrough.
It does.
For a 3-player game.
It does, and I think that's a mistake.
And I think he's harder even than in a 3-player game than he is in a 4-player game, because in a 4-player game you can move one space and your chances are you're with somebody else, and encouraging other people to switch factions with him is really important because he gives them benefits for doing that. If you can't get in the same space as other people easily, it's a little harder.
3-player game is very, very hard. Its problem is you're going to end up with generally, you could have everyone in the same faction, but then you get this weird thing happening. But you're going to end up with one person in one faction, 2 people in another, and I don't think it works out very well. I think you should retry it with 4 players. By the way, that was done by my Tiny Epic people up here, Gameling Games. That's one of their few big box games they made. They made Land, Air, and Sea. They've made that, and I thought they made a 3rd game that was a big box game. But it definitely Land, Air, and Sea, and The Last Kingdom. So, and the other thing that hurts the game is it has movie stills in there, and I hate movie stills.
That didn't bother me too much, but
I do think the game's solid, and I do think you need to try it again with 4-player, and I do respect the fact that you didn't like it with 3-player.
Yeah, I definitely want to try it more with 4 players. I think that, yeah, as you said, you're right. 3 players is where it falls. There was one other game I've been playing, but I'll probably have to talk about it next episode because I can't think of what it was.
Okay.
It's still on the table upstairs. So Evan, what have you been playing?
Evan, what have you been playing?
So since it's been a little bit since we talked, we recently had CosCon, so I played a few games there.
Blood on the Clock Tower.
I played Blood on the Clock Tower. Fantastic game. I always judge the quality of the game with the after game.
Yep.
If people were talking about the game after the game, oh, this happened if we did that, and that, all that. If people were talking about it like that, then I know the game was really well. And I think half the table was still sitting around talking about different things that happened in the game, which to me, good. It was a great game. Got that. Played a couple other games, but I'm going to talk about 2, but really only talking about one because the other one we're going to talk about quite frequently in our main topic.
Yes.
So the one that I am going to talk about is a game that I'm really high on. I really love. I'm waiting to hear about it when James gets a copy and plays it at lunch and see how that goes.
Yes.
We're doomed.
Yes, we are.
So We're Doomed. It is a game that it's a take that game, but it's a real-time game, but it's also a cooperative, semi-cooperative game. / it's a game that you can't take seriously as you play because the things that happen to it is hilarious. I got to play it twice. The second time we played was much better. There was yelling at each other, pointing fingers, loud, obnoxious laughing. James couldn't touch tokens through the entire game, otherwise he was going to die. I got into a thumb wrestling match with Peter. It was fantastic. It was great. Peter enjoyed it. Everyone at the table really, really enjoyed it. So the premise of the game is you have 15 minutes before the world is going to end, and as a leader of one of the last remaining countries, you are contributing resources to the project. The project is a spaceship to take you out in outer space to survive the cataclysm that is happening, but there's only going to be so many seats. So everyone contributes resources to the project in order to build seats. However, there's probably not going to be enough seats for everybody. So you have to balance getting resources versus influence, because resources build the rocket, but whoever has the most influence at the end of the game is going to get the seat. So you have to balance everything with there. You have the ability to nuke another player and completely remove him from the game, which James did to me.
I was a
he's jerk.
philanthropist. I decided to put you out of your misery early.
But to the detriment, if you take somebody out, that's one less person contributing resources.
Yeah.
Which you guys ended up not getting off the planet.
Nope.
So we all lost.
Yep.
Great. But yeah, it was great. The best part about the game, as the timer never stops as it's going, is the event cards, because the event cards add so much there. I think one of my favorite ones was James got the filibuster card.
Yeah, I like that one
the
a lot.
entire card is just a wall of text, and you have to start reading it. It tells you to read slowly, and you can't stop. And the game can't continue until he's done reading the card. People can pay him resources to speed up.
Yep.
So and there's a whole bunch of different cards in there, and there are cards that affect the game. Peter had one that made the timer flip, so we actually got extra time. It's a great game. It's not a serious game, but it's a great 15-minute game. But from the stories of your lunchroom, I think that it would be a great fit for you guys to get a game or two of that in, and you're going to have a lot of fun. I'm really high into this game. I got it from a Facebook ad. Probably the best production video I've seen put out by a company. $30. Get it. You're going to enjoy it. So much fun. We're going to play it at some point in the channel.
I want to comment for any non-US listeners. If you're not familiar with the concept of filibuster, look into it. It's a crazy part of US law and legal system, government system.
Yes.
Really.
The other one that I got to play, and I always enjoy getting a chance to play it, but I'm not going to talk about it too much because we're going to talk about it later.
That would be Earth.
Earth, probably one of my favorite games right now. Looks so pretty. Building your ecosystem. Great game. Absolutely great game. It looks like a lot when you get it onto the table, but the concept and actually playing the game, it's actually very, very straightforward. So, great game.
And there's an expansion coming out for it.
Yeah, on Earth Day.
On Earth Day, yep.
And you'll have upgraded components, everything. Everything is made from recycled product. So, which is really, really cool. But yeah, they're going to add another expansion, more cards, more everything for everything. It's really, really exciting. I can't wait for that to drop. So, James, talk about the 900 games you played at CosCon.
Oh my gosh, I played so many games at CosCon. It's great. I got to play I fully painted Scythe with all the expansions and everything, and I have all this cool stuff. And that was the first time I got to play with all the blinged out stuff. So that was super fun. I ended up third place in that one, but I had a lot of fun. It was an amazing game. I got to teach. We played a full player count game too. Full player count, crazy. And we got it done in a reasonable amount of time. And everyone had a lot of fun. And every single person there was a new player except for me. So, I think Jason was playing it too. So two of us were knowledgeable of the game. So I thought it went pretty good for not having that many people that have played it before. It's very the Stonemaier Games did a really good job laying out the boards, so it's easy to tell what you're going to be doing. Evan's son played that one, and he did pretty good. But yeah, the one thing about Scythe is it's not a mech combat game, even though that's like a super like mechs on the outside, and it looks like you're going to do a lot of mech war. You only get to fight up to, well, you can fight more, but it won't matter. You really only can fight really up to twice to get the stars that you need to win the game. Any more fighting doesn't really help you. It actually potentially might help your opponent. So really love the game. Really great game. It's been a long time since I played it. But I played a lot of games at the convention. It was a lot of fun. I'm going to talk about something else that happened at the convention that I got a new hobby I'm getting into. But before that, I played 2 Rove games that are going to be coming onto Kickstarter here soon. By the time this actually releases, they will be on Kickstarter. That's going to be by Button Shy Games. They're both solo games, but it's Rove, Aqua Rove, which is going to be the undersea version of it. And I actually think the Aqua Rove one, I liked Rove. Aqua Rove is actually slightly harder, so it's a little bit more challenging, so I like that a lot. You're basically trying to finish 7 patterns with a limited pool of cards before you run out of cards, and you either pass or you don't. It's a solo game, and I don't play very many of those. And the other one was Rove Junior, which is like a junior version of it. I'm really excited to get my daughters into playing that because it has a lot of really good teaching elements to it. They're going to learn a lot of strategy from it, but it's not as complicated difficult, I guess, as Rove. So I really highly recommend Rove Junior if you're looking for any kids or anyone that you want to sort of get into more strategy stuff. That would be the puppy for that. So Evan's been on this channel forever. He is the master of meeples, our master of miniatures. Sorry, not meeples, master of miniatures. Not the same thing.
I am surrounded by miniatures down here. There's so many.
I've played,
but not one is from what you are doing.
Yeah,
not
one. So, so I have played a couple miniature games with Evan over the time, and I've played a couple other miniature games with people that have come to the library game day, which we're having another one coming up here soon. I'm sad about. But yeah, so I watched a couple videos while I was sick on Warhammer, and it was not really what I thought it was. It is definitely far more deep and interesting than I thought it would be, and there's a lot of rules to it too, so I really was excited about that. A lot of specialty things for it. So I've recently got into Warhammer, so now I'm making actually a Tyranid army on there, which I'm really excited about. I got most of it assembled. I'm working on my Gene Stealers right now, and I'll have a good army to go with. We have a pretty good play groups in this area, and I really enjoyed actually putting them together, and I'm going to really enjoy painting them. I'm really glad I'm doing the Tyranids first because they were the easiest to paint. And then with the sets that I got a lot of Space Marines, and I got the Horus Heresy stuff. The lore for the game is amazing. It's like cool. So people are like, everyone's a villain. There is 0 good people in Warhammer 40k or Warhammer in general. No one's good. The Space Marines are super evil. The Tyranids, super evil. The Space Elves, they're just weird. The dwarfs, evil. The Space Elves are weird, Nathan. You said they are super weird. Someone really liked elves, basically. But yeah, they're all evil. And it's really fun because everyone's super evil and the villains are everyone's a villain. So you get to use all the cool, horrible machinery and do horrible things. It's a lot of fun. Now I'm doing the Tyranids. We're just ingesting everyone and making a giant biomass for who knows what. But
it does sound interesting, but are you broke yet?
Anyway, moving on. I don't know. It's going to be exciting. I'm going to probably rope Evan in, but he doesn't. I mean, he could just use armies that I make, so he won't. And
the best Warhammer armies are your friends' Warhammer armies.
Yeah, there you go. So you can use Warhammer armies. Friend of the channel, Jacobs, he's making his own armies on there. He's doing a big Space Marine army. He has a lot of artillery too, which I'm having to make strategies for. We got a big channel. If you like Warhammer or like tabletop games in general, you should join our Discord server. We have really good in-depth discussions on there, and right now our Warhammer section is going strong.
Or if you want to play a real miniature game, there'll be a historical section.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that
because that's the better choice.
Yeah,
just saying.
I
can't really say too much because as big as your Warhammer collection has already got, like my French and Indian War is gigantic.
Yeah,
I have so much.
Oak and Iron is one I want to play with you, and I know you have at least a set or 2 of Oak and Iron. Yeah, And I have one set of oaken iron, so I have enough that I can I do like a little skirmish with you with that. That'd be fun. I also like the Ironside sort of thing too. So, and we you can talk real quickly about your Race to the Dan channel too.
Oh, well, I'll talk. Yeah. So recently, I had really haven't mentioned it before, but we actually just completed a online campaign. So I'm really active with the Little Wars TV Discord. Big fan of their channel and a lot of the stuff that they do with the historicals and all that. Friends with some of the guys on there and some of the other guys that I've met through the channel. We go to conventions together. They're members of our Discord, and um, we've had Patrick on here for Dawn of Iron like forever ago. But we finished up a Gettysburg campaign that was completely online. It was great. Everyone got to be a corps commander for the entire Gettysburg campaign. I took the role of Robert E. Lee and led the Confederacy to victory. And that was a lot of fun. While that was going on, Patrick and I talked about some of the rules that were implemented in that game, how we would change some things. And then he's a big Revolutionary War guy, and this is one of his favorite things that events that happened during the Revolutionary War, the Race to the Dan. So we actually put a campaign together, and it is actually kicking off the event. First event is happening Saturday. So in 2 days from this recording is going to be starting. We actually got James to commit and play. And the funniest thing that I didn't even realize happened, but I'm going to have to post a picture on our Discord of James, and the historical picture of the commander that he's playing. They look very similar.
There we go. So that works out.
It just happened that way, but it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to run through that, and there's actually another campaign that I'm in the midst of writing now that will probably take place right after Race of the Dan. We put a lot of one of the guys, his name is Chris, put a lot of work into implementing changes to this rule set to make it able to play in a blind version online, and then we've refined it from there. And we're pretty confident that this rule set is going to be usable for a long time going forward because it really works really well. So a lot of historical campaigns are going to be happening over Discords are going to be popping up to make these, and opportunities to jump in those will be available through our Discord because since I help run a lot of these, I can get seats because I make it. Haha.
Yes,
Power trip.
That's gonna be really cool. And like you said, we'll have a historical miniature channel in there too. So if you like historical miniature, you can do all the talking in there. And yeah, we just like to promote any type of conversations or getting a community going in that area. So that's cool.
Always working on historical miniatures.
So small.
Well, they are miniature.
They are miniatures. All right. So
I can't. I'm having trouble picturing a Revolutionary War general that looked like James because I just imagine the wild facial hair for all these Revolutionary War generals.
Wild facial hair.
You know,
well, we don't know
over the
shavers.
top sideburns and the mustaches.
What are these things you call shavers? Razors? Never heard of razors. We like to have our food on our beard so we can eat it later. It's called rationing, dear sir.
Here we go. I'm going to grab a picture of this real quick and post it on Discord, and
all
people
right.
can see it later. But I, while we're recording this live here, I'm going to see what Nathan says. Here we go. Got the picture. Dropping this in here.
Let's see this picture. Where'd you put it?
I'm going to put it in our.
I didn't know anyone would be as good looking as me in the past, but you never know. You should put it in the regular general channel.
Well, once I'm going to take it. I'm going to put your picture next to it, and I'm going to put it in the general.
What? I don't know about that. That guy has a forehead. I don't have a forehead.
I can see that.
Nope.
Do you see the resemblance?
Die. All right, moving on. But yeah, so let's go ahead and go. We're going to move on to our main topic. And our main topic today is going to be nature-themed games. Nathan doesn't play any nature-themed games, so we could just skip him. There's none even behind him. It just don't worry about it. But since Evan alluded to one, we'll go ahead and let Evan start with one of the wonderful games there.
Yeah, so nature themed recently has been exploding. I would say within the last 12 to 18 months, there has been a large trend in nature themed games. And you can look at a few of the titles behind Nathan there. We have Wingspan, we have Arc Nova, Earth, which I showed he has back there. Even nature adjacent with Apiary. I even have a couple other. If you look at like games,
He's
even
in
such as
space,
something
isn't nature, Jason? No, I'm kidding.
nature adjacent.
We'll
Even
talk
stuff
more
like
about that later.
Flamecraft definitely has some nature-esque themes into it, and then you got the couple of mushroom games that recently came out. Mariposa came out a few years ago.
Truffle something, yeah.
Planted, you have a copy of
Planted,
that.
yep.
But yeah, there has been a large trend in this field. And when you look at these games, and a lot of the games that we mentioned, we're not talking about like super light one-off kind of games and then that's it. We're talking about good, solid games that you can play. What do you guys think is this driving force behind this thing? This kind of nature engine that's happening. I have my thoughts about it, and I'm going to talk about Earth. I think Earth is a good example of it. So, with a lot of talk about Earth environmental stuff like that, just seeing the world interaction and everything kind of coming together is just a more appealing thought to some people right now. It's beautiful, it looks good, and you can find so much synergy within nature itself. And I think that's one of the nice, cool concepts with Earth, that it forces you to look at synergies as you're building your engines. You get all these beautiful cards laid out, and you're building this wonderful ecosystem. And it's a game that you do that in. You're not like taking that to anybody. You're just playing this nice, calm, happy kind of game. And I think that's where there's some good appeal in all that.
So I think nature games have been around for a while. I think the problem was that it wasn't like a super popular theme for publishers necessarily, because they didn't feel that their audience may not be like as big of enough an audience out there. Like Pencil First Games does like ton of nature first themed games. Like they have Herbaceous, Floriferous, Delicious. They have, and then we have other companies that came out with Arboretum, where you do your trees. And then before Wingspan, even you had 2 tree games. One was the one horrible one that people photosynthesis, the one that people yell at me at because I'm super mean in that game. And there was another one where you also put down trees, and then there were squirrels and leaves and stuff. I can't quite remember the name of that game. So there's been a bunch out there. Bosk, yes, Bosk was the other one on there. That was actually a pretty fun game too. Not as mean as photosynthesis is a mean game, but fun.
It's supposed to be a nice happy game.
It's not. It's
happy,
mean.
Happy
well, I mean,
trees.
it's an abstract game, but you're mean and it can be mean, even if you don't mean to be. And then you got games like Wingspan that came out, and I actually think it was Wingspan plus Everdale really helped out. Wingspan, they were like, no one really thought there's that many birders out there or people who like birds. And I think that's one of those games that it was just amazing that there's that amount of people that have that side interest in birds. That I can't tell you how many people I know that don't play board games have Wingspan. So normally I know people that don't play board games, they have Monopoly. But I mean, they have Monopoly and Wingspan. Now, I know a large amount of people that have bought Wingspan because it looks really cool and they like the idea, and they can't figure out how to play it because it is a giant leap from playing Monopoly to Wingspan. There's a lot of mechanics in there that can like really quickly overwhelm people, that people outside the inside our hobby don't really realize, that since we've learned all these games that they're actually hard for people to learn or grasp. But Wingspan, I think, really propelled it. It was promoted by the Audubon Society. It had that nice Stonemeyer Games quality to it. And it's a really good game. I mean, it's not overly complicated, so it's good for a good swath of people. But it has a good amount of complexity to it, so it's good for the experienced players. But between that and Everdale, and they're just seeing the popularity of like nature themed games like explode because of Wingspan, I think that's what really got publishers to say, hey, let's do some nature themed games.
Well, I think Wingspan did an important thing that helped launch it. And all of those games you mentioned that were before Wingspan were mean games. And I think part of what happened with Wingspan is people realized there is a big audience of people who could be interested in board games, but are turned off by the level complexity and the viciousness of some of the games, and they want something that's a friendly, relatively simple. And in Wingspan, some of the cards you play, they're good for you, but they're also good for other people. So you're actually inadvertently helping, and you don't feel like you're screwing up by accidentally helping people. And a lot of the nature themed games that came after Wingspan have used that more.
What do you think, Evan?
I agree that to that, and I think another thing that really helped it too was I keep wanting to say Wormspan just because that just came out, which I want to get a copy of that at some point.
Cool. It is more complicated too.
But I think the big thing for Wingspan was getting that endorsement. I think that was an absolutely huge thing. There are, just like you said, James, there are a lot of people that are interested in birds or slightly interested in birds. And that group is huge. It's just a huge amount, as we're seeing from the amount of copies that Wingspan have sold. I think getting that endorsement from the Audubon Society showed that people that do have an interest in board games that might not have known this game would ever came out, now seeing that this is a blending of two things that I like. Let's check this out. And then as it goes and goes, the word of mouth spreads, and I think that was a key thing for that game, which likewise would propel, because it's a trend that all the game designers are watching. What is the next thing that's going to sell? Because if we rewind this clock 5 years ago, what was the thing that was selling? Zombie games. There was zombie games everywhere. But then I think the train is right now on this nature themed. It seems, I don't know if it's slowing down yet or not, but I'm sure we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I think that's what really propelled it, was once they got that endorsement.
Yeah, so like like you said, like the Vikings games, there used to be very few Viking games, and then everyone's like, everyone likes Viking games, so then they make a billion Viking games. And that's exactly how it works. And that gets into, publishers are still having a problem, I think, actually understanding their audiences. I think some of them do better than others. But like, yes, and the Wingspan nature theme worked really well, but if you look at Mariposa, which was also a very good game, people weren't as interested in butterflies. That game didn't do nearly as well. So I think that it's not like the nature theme is exploding, but I don't think it's like exploding in all aspects.
Mariposa, I think, also didn't do quite as well because it felt more of an abstract strategy game than a nature theme.
Well,
it was pretty heavy.
I mean,
abstracted.
Sure. But I mean, to that defense, I would say the majority of people that have bought Wingspan never played it. So,
yep. And I get it on the developer end. I understand if you're looking at, I'm going to spend resources to make X game, whatever that may be.
Yeah.
If I'm going to spend the resources to do that, am I going to hit what is trending now, or am I going to go and take that leap on something new?
Yeah.
They tend to go the safer route because of the return on investment is going to be likelier, better. Well, not so much better, but more solid as opposed to taking that leap, because you never know. We've seen so many games that are good games that were maybe just before their time. We all have a large collection of those, and it was just developers taking that leap instead of hitting what was popular at the time. But the downside is when you make that development cycle, are you hitting that on the upswing or on the downswing?
Yeah, and I think part of the thing that can't gloss over very much with this is out of all of them nature themed games, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I'm pretty sure Wingspan wins. They've sold millions of copies, and I think a lot of that has to do with A, people like the theme, and B, the way that Stonemaier Games does their marketing. Stonemaier Games puts a crap ton of review copies out. They make it easy for reviewers to review the game. They promote it through their site. They pay for really good how to play videos. They do all this really good marketing. They get the word of mouth out of it really quickly, so it's easier for people to be aware of the game. Because if you're looking at the average person, the chances of them hearing about these games are very low. So he got the momentum going, and then having it in Target stores really helped even more.
Well,
So
and that's the other part I was going to say. And one thing that they did really well was placing it in the right stores, because one of the most fantastic choices for them to put Wingspan in was Barnes and Noble.
yeah, Barnes and Noble, great one too.
Because if you look at the clientele that usually goes into a Barnes and Noble or a bookstore along those type, they're more likely to see that and be interested in that, as opposed to, I mean, Targets and Walmarts and stuff like that do have games that have, yeah, you have a good shot at selling some. But I think when you look at the clientele to what is purchased in there, I think is probably a better return on investment going into a Barnes and Noble. And I don't know how many times I've gone into a Barnes and Noble and saw copies of Wingspan up front and center by registers on like individual tables, and they're never full. There's always copies taken from that display, which is showing. And at this time, I don't know when you're going to be watching this video, but it's 2024. Wingspan's been out for a couple years now.
It's still
happening.
Yeah,
it's still selling.
It's a great game. I mean, I don't think it's an intro level game. I think it's pretty close, but I don't think it's an intro level game because I've met too many people that it was too hard for them to be like, this is my first big board game. I'm like, they have lots of problems. Like, let's try Sushi Go. Let's get some stuff down and, get you into some of the mechanics that are present in that game, or like, you know what I mean? Just start set collection, start some stuff, it's not just roll and move,
yeah, it's deceptive in that way.
Yeah.
For people who play a lot of games, it's all familiar mechanics, but if you don't, it's not.
Yeah.
And the worst thing is people don't want to feel stupid. They do not want to feel stupid. So it's the worst thing to have the bitter taste in their mouth from playing Wingspan and being like, I don't know what's happening. Instead, you build them up to it so they can have that enjoyment and have that fun.
Yeah, if someone the hardest game that they play is Clue for the deduction part,
you're right,
then jumping them into Wingspan is going to be a very big leap.
Yeah. So, and I don't think it's going to be enjoyable as it should be for them. Right. So, yeah. And I think it's a great Gemma game, and I think people, if you get them into it right, they'll really love it, or other games, or at least get the taste for other games.
I have recently played my first game of it digitally, and it's a good game. It is a solid game. It's not one of my favorite games, but it's a good, solid game. It really is.
And I think digital,
I can see the appeal.
And digital adaptations of it, the marketing that Steam does, all that stuff, really does also help sell the base game. So that helps out too. that keeps it going. Especially good digital adaptations. And that one is one of them.
Well, that app that they made that does the bird sounds, it has no impact on the game, but I think it probably had a significant impact on the sales because, even if people aren't using the app, it's something people talk about all the time. It's like, you got this app, you could take, scan the card and hear what the bird sounds like.
Yep.
Well, and I think one thing that's really cool with Wingspan too, because before I played it, I've watched numerous people play it. I just never jumped into the games of them. But whether you have new people playing it or a steady group of people that are playing it, there's always somebody that's going, they play a bird and the game stops as they talk about that bird. Like, oh, I saw this. This was a whatever, and there's a couple minute conversation about the bird, which is an absolute fantastic thing for the game. Like people are connecting over, these things within the game and also outside of the game. And I really always enjoyed that part of it too. I just always thought it was neat. Like just seeing that.
Yeah, so we get into accessible games. So we have Wingspan that's accessible enough. And then we get into nature themed games that are arguably non-accessible. So they'd be just for hardcore gamers and stuff. So that's a much more smaller crowd instead of that wide, like sort of just shooting everything everywhere. So you get into, let's say, Ark Nova. Or
Yeah,
even
right there, right there with next to Nathan there. Ark Nova is a great game. I really enjoyed it. I only got to play it the one time on there, but it was really enjoyable. But it is definitely not a. Let's just jump into this my first time of playing. You will just watch your brain leak out of your ear.
And I actually think Terraforming Mars really, really helped it out because a lot of people played Terraforming Mars. A lot of people learned Terraforming Mars. Now, Ark Nova is not Terraforming Mars, but the same seed is there. So it's not a huge jump from playing Terraforming Mars to go to Ark Nova. And a lot of the Terraforming Mars crowd jumped into Ark Nova too. I actually think
scratches the same itch.
Right. I actually think it's better currently, Ark Nova, than Terraforming Mars. In fact, Terraforming Mars for me has been completely replaced by what Terraforming Mars is over here, by Terraforming Mars Ares. I do like that game a lot better, but it's a different game too. And then I like Ark Nova better. So I don't know if it's I've played Terraforming Mars out, but there's a lot of cracks in Terraforming Mars if you played as much as I have.
I think the big thing with Ark Nova, though, is, if you aren't that experienced in board games, you may be able to play it. It'd be a struggle, but you are going to get absolutely slaughtered. You're going to score very, very few points, and you're going to feel bad.
Well, that's why they changed the scoring on it a little bit, so you're not getting negative points anymore.
I think that is huge because that is the biggest the complaint I had with that. I enjoyed the game, but seeing somebody playing that for the first time and be like, wow, I scored -20. That's
yeah. And the way they changed it didn't even matter, so it was whatever.
No, it does feel better. Like instead of scoring -6 your first time to scoring like 32 or however, I can't remember how they did the conversion, but whatever, you're scoring positive points. So
yeah,
that's good.
Which I'm fine with, and I love my copy of that. I still got to get the expansion for it. I haven't got that yet. Actually, I think they're doing another expansion too. So I'm excited about doing the first one, seeing how that goes in. I'm not a huge expansion person. Most expansions flop for me, but I am excited to see some additional stuff for that. Apiary is on the same boat. It's not an entry level game. Out of the three of them, I would think Earth is the closest to being the easiest to teach. I think you can play Earth without really knowing what's happening because it's easy to tell what you're going to be doing. It's the scoring part that's going to probably take a bit.
Yeah, the scoring part is the hardest part, I think. And what I try to tell people with that one is you can't focus on everything. So if you're just starting, focus on one or two things. What helps with that game is you only really have 4 actions to choose from. So that really helps on your decision making.
Well, you can always play it where, this is just a learning game. We're just playing for fun. Don't worry about the scoring too much. Okay, then when we finish the game, let's just see how the scoring works. So next time we can play it seriously.
Yeah. And in in that game too, you can actually just take your time and be like, but the thing is like, there's a little bit of I don't care in that game on Earth, I think, which I think it was really lends to it because like I don't give a crap. I'm building freaking trees. I get all these trees. I'm chaining all this stuff. I'm doing all this cool stuff. And then one time I was looking at it, I was like, wow, I actually end up with nothing at the end. I did all these things. I converted back and forth, did all these really cool chaining engine things. And I sat down and I was like, wait a minute. I didn't get anything.
Net zero engines.
Zero engines. And I'm like, I need to put a different garden here because it's not working out.
Well, another thing that's very present in all these games we talked about is the information behind it. There's a lot of actual passive learning. You're there having fun, playing a game, and just absorbing this all this information of things you vaguely interested in or maybe more interested in without feeling like you're studying or you're intentionally learning the stuff. And you feel good and smarter after you play the game.
Yeah, so much smarter. I was like, my brain is getting bigger.
What are you learning with apiary? Is that like the bees are going to take over the world?
Yeah, it's a true story. It's actually a historical document that hasn't happened yet.
Oh, okay. I still haven't even opened my copy. It's still sitting over there.
Yeah, did you get the one with the upgraded components?
Probably. It's still in shrink, so I can't tell you.
Conversation, but that'll come up later more. But
no,
it's for the sort of like the pure nature ones.
But honestly, yeah, I mean, you look at like Wingspan, where you get the common name, you get the scientific name, and you get a little bit of details about that. Earth, it's the same exact thing. You're getting that. You're talking about the conservation efforts and Arc Nova. Like, you are learning something, even if it's just a little bit. Yeah. Every time you're playing that game, though.
And one of the things I was going to throw out too, so we have those whole complicated ones. Also, like roll and writes became super popular, so there was a ton of roll and write games out there, or flip and write, or whatever write you want to be on there. And like I named off some of the Pencil First did a whole ton of lines of them, and they're all fun, and they was all nature themed. I'm not really sure how well they did. I think they did pretty well. I know Arboretum, which is not Pencil First Games. I think that's Renegade Games. I can't remember which one that is. That one also did well, and that's not a roll and write, but it's another really small nature-themed game. That's when we were trying to make an arboretum, so you're trying to make like tree collections and stuff, and they have a lot of nature-themed trick-taking games that came out and simple games. I think the nature theme itself is becoming more popular with the good casual games. Nathan has 4 things behind him, but I don't think there's still like. Do you think there's still, other than let's say the small games, which is easy to do a nature theme on a small game because the like most roll and writes are themeless. Making themes in like more complicated games like you see behind you, I actually don't think that there's a whole plethora of those compared to other themes that come out. So do you guys think that's pretty much hit its apex, or is it going to shrink a little bit, or do you think it's going to keep growing and having I'm not talking about compounding more, I'm talking about on releases for the year. Do you think there'll be more nature themed games, or you think it's going to taper back down? Or, I mean, not including small games, because that could just be whatever.
I think we are approaching the apex. I think we're almost there. So I think we're going to have some more this year, but I think going into 2025, you're going to see some, but it's going to decline out. So really, the next thing that we're going to see is end of 25 to 26. What is going to be the next trend? I think that's where we're at in this cycle right now.
Well, and I think Apiary kind of proves that out, because, I really feel that the publisher was worried about the saturation of nature themes. and that's most likely why they chose to give it a space theme to make it feel different than all these other nature games that are coming out right now. And I think it worked really well for it. Uh,
I mean, the space
Wormspan is
theme
doing a
doesn't
similar,
actually fit it.
right.
I mean, it is,
It,
but yeah,
and you got
still a good game.
Wormspan doing the same thing for Wingspan.
Yeah, I mean, but that's collected dragons. That's the same thing with the same thing with birds. Like I like all the birds, they're real or whatever, but I like all the types of dragons. I want to get all the dragons, and they have baby dragons. You know,
But it's a fantasy theme.
it's a fantasy theme, but it's like I really liked. They had a card game called Worm out before, and they had like tons of different dragons you get with all these booster packs. I just really like dragons. So I liked having all those different types of dragons, like seeing all the ones from the different cultures and stuff. So that one's really up my alley. I'm hoping they sort of do like with Wingspan you did like real birds all over the place. I'm hoping with Wormspan, which I have no idea, but I'm hoping with Wormspan they actually do them off of actual mythology for the different dragons that existed around there. So that's what I'm hoping, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know that there's that many. There's over 100 cards for Wingspan, I believe. So if they're doing expansions and stuff, they're gonna have to make up stuff.
I haven't played it yet, but I know they did put a lot of information about the various dragons, but it did sound like it was largely they're making up their own mythology.
Yeah,
Which is fine, but yeah.
And like you were saying, I think those two things right there are um, kind of telling that we're approaching the top end of that. Um, if we're going with apiary as a nature adjacent theme, and we're taking Wingspan, which as we talked about just a little bit ago, how good it did for this genre, and now we're reskinning it with some changes as something else. I think we're starting to dip our toes to look beyond this peak. The other thing that is kind of telling me that we're going that way is actually going back to Earth. So, Earth this last year was placed number one or within the top 10 on so many, and I mean so many reviewers' top 10 list, and quite a few number ones. Like the Dice Tower actually put it, I think, number one this last year for them, which is huge. I mean, they're a huge channel to be listed number one. But I just saw a post on a really large board game group. They were talking about Earth. It was something. It was a ridiculous number of number ones that they won, and the next closest game was way, way down. The fact that it did that well, but the nobody's really talking about that it did that well, I think is also showing that there is starting to get a fatigue for that genre. So I think that's why we're almost there and we're starting to come out of it now.
Yeah, and I think part of the other problem too for it is not a new mechanic. There's a lot of games that do it similar to it that have been in the past, and there's a plethora of those. Even though Earth does a lot of things better and is more satisfying in a lot of things, just because there's just a huge saturation of that, I think that kills it too a little bit. But yeah, and I do enjoy playing Earth. The keeping score at the end, oh my gosh, they need to work on that. But the gameplay itself is really fun.
So another thing I want to talk about is a adjacent genre that I don't feel has taken off, even though nature is really popular. Ecology and environmentalist themes, I don't feel like they've been nearly as successful. And I kind of wanted your thoughts of why you think that's true.
Because the most time it's not something people want to think about. It's just not like nature's like, hey, I like birds, I like bees, I like zoos, I like oil spills. Like, nah. And I think that's why a lot of those just fall flat. And a lot of people don't want to be talked at in a game. So that's the other thing too. Like, I don't want to have this environmental stuff shoved down my throat while I play this game, even if I am an environmentalist. And I think a lot of those get thrown into the educational category. Where like, oh, this is an educational game. Well, 99% of educational games are horrible. So people get that bad taste in their mouth from playing educational games. And there's a lot of exceptions, like I have it over here too, Compounded. There's a lot of good educational games that are a lot of fun, but 99% of them aren't. I just really don't think that's like the theme that people are really like. I want to go clean oil off of baby ducks. Like,
Yeah, I think it's a harder theme to make a satisfying game, and I think that's
right.
why they stick with it. One that I did for the channel that wasn't bad was what was it called Spill Out. That one
Yeah,
wasn't too bad.
like
It
a
was more
pandemic-y thing, right? Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was satisfying just because you got to build the oil derrick on there and use that as a random caster of die, so where the oil's going. And I thought that was a really cool mechanic that they put into it, but it had its shortcomings, which we talked about in my review video.
Yeah.
It has the same problems that Pandemic does.
Yeah.
So that's where it fell short. But I think that's where the problem is. It's hard to put a good quality game in there if we go with just slightly broader without having to talk down to people about it. We can have more appeal to people, I think.
And people like what they like, so things fall in different groupings for people. And I just don't think like for the majority of people, environmental disasters are really like something that I think, oh yeah, board game, you know.
I think
No, most people are trying to do it for a little bit of an escapism, so they're going to be playing other things they don't want to worry about,
like, look at this duck.
yeah.
Ooh, look at this duck covered in oil. Boo.
Boo. Or like, hey, let's go ahead and clean up this dump. I'm like, oh, okay. Let's try something else. I'm gonna go kill orcs.
Yeah. If I wanted to clean up a dump, I will do that in my child's room.
Yeah. So I mean, I really don't think that that's like, I mean, I can always be wrong on these. I'm not doing any scientific study on anything, but just gauging the temperature of how the games like perform and like BGG and all that stuff on there. Pretty much not popular. So,
and I think the closest that you can get and stay in a popular vein, and of course, like again, this is based on zero scientific fact and zero researchability. But when you look at like the conservation stuff in Arc Nova, like we're doing a conservation thing.
yeah.
We don't really talk about what that was though. So it's just we did that and we're moving on. Look at the zoo. Let's put this snake in this reptile house. Conservation something, penguin.
Yeah, I think the best ones that come in there is they're going to have like trekking, which is going to be, different national parks and stuff. And I mean, that's more like the area. They're not saving anything from whatever. Or, super exciting things like volcanoes exploding. That would work. You also have games like Barren Park. That's a polynomial style game. That's super abstract, but that's another popular thing. It has to have something different.
I think James hit it on the head. It's like the biggest problem is with anything environmental themed or ecology themed, it's very hard to avoid feeling like you're preaching, like the game is preaching to the players and telling them what they should think. And people don't like being told what they should think about something, even if it's something they agree with.
And even that, I mean, it does get boring too if it's just like a theme on rails. There was a couple exceptions. That game we played on Board Game Arena wasn't too bad.
Daybreak,
yeah, that's an environmental game, but it doesn't really feel like it either. It's like a little bit of a pandemic-y feel. I keep using the word pandemic-y. What's that?
It is Matt Leacock.
Yeah, so it is Matt Leacock. So it's in his veins. But that game is very environmentally, but I didn't really think about the environmental plus as much. It's like, oh, you're adding carbon. I'm like, no, we're adding black cubes. Black cubes are bad. Get them away.
And I do think that pandemic-y is a good word for what we do because people understand that.
Yeah. So
I don't know. I don't remember. Did we actually record and post that?
We should have, but I think we just played it together.
But it is a good game. I don't
Evan might like
think
it
it'll
too.
be very popular because
No, it will not be
of
popular
the
at all.
theme,
Uh-uh.
but it is a solid game.
Yeah, I think I like it. I think it's same as Forest Shuffle. I don't think Forest Shuffle will be popular really, but I like the game. I
Yeah.
think Forest Shuffle will be a lot more popular than the other game we're talking about. What was the name of that game on BGA that we played?
Daybreak.
Daybreak. Yeah, I
Yeah,
even forgot
which
the name.
it's also one of the rare cases where I didn't think the BGA version of it was great. I would vastly prefer the physical version. Most cases, I think BGA does a great job, but just not in this case. It was a little bit hard to track. Of course, it's a little bit hard to track in the physical game, and I can see why they had trouble adapting that, and it got it even harder to keep track of what's going on.
I could also see in the physical game where it's super easy to screw up. Just tracking stuff. Like, I think that's the other problem with the game. I think if you're going to have a game like that, was fine on BGA because it was a lot of fun and it did all the work for us, and even that you weren't super happy about. But I think playing the physical game would be sort of a nightmare for making sure we track everything, making sure everything gets done properly, and that sort of thing.
It was rough, but I wouldn't go as far as saying it's a nightmare.
No, I'm being a little exaggeration, but
yeah,
it's not going to be.
A lot of,
it's not going to be a walk in the park. Let's put it that way.
It was a lot of we're at this step. Oh wait, we just skipped one step. Let's go back one step, do that, and we'll go back to finish this step we're on.
But yeah, so there's tons of examples. I think nature themed games have been around before Wingspan. Wingspan Wingspan sales just in general, if you had any theme on it, which people like birds, so that just shot everything up. But I think you're going to find a lot of the publishers back away from the nature theme a little bit. I think is my prediction, and you're going to see a lot more nature theme show up on Kickstarter because the publisher said no, sort of thing, but they still really, really want a nature theme, and I think you're going to see those decline in performance.
But it is funny how incredibly mean a lot of nature games were before.
Yeah, and I was fine with that. I really enjoyed Wingspan because it was really easy to teach, and I could get a lot of people to play it, and a lot of people like the theme. So yeah, hopefully they bring more games out of that with a different mechanic, but the same,
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that was nature themed games. I hope you guys enjoyed this show. I really like this talk on here. We're going to be doing more stuff in the future, so check out our channel. We have tons of reviews. If you like this video, please subscribe. It really helps us out a ton. And please join our Discord channel. We have a lot of great conversations on there, and I want to keep growing that. So for now, you all have a good night.